everybody. Welcome to the Write or Die podcast. I am your host, Randi-lee. On today's episode, we actually are going to have two guests join us today. It's a first time to have a pair, and they are a really fun couple. So Justin and Alexis Black are going to be joining us and talking about all of their experiences. So welcome, Justin and Alexis. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be on here today.
So you guys are the first duo to be interviewed together. So I don't know who wants to go first, but tell us a little bit about who each of you are.
Yeah, of course. We have a kind of like figure it out where we kind of just bounce off of each other. But
Perfect.
Yeah, so my name is Justin Black, and we both are foster care alumni. Here with my wife, Alexis Black. And before I even get too much into our story, I always love to talk about how we met, because it's an amazing story, and it's also the first chapter of our book. The chapter is called Words on the Index Card, and if you ever get the chance to read the book, you'll understand the meaning behind that. But so the process of us meeting really was us just going through, we were coming in, some like so many different like things in life to where we came together. And she was coming out of a abusive relationship that she'll talk more about, and I was coming from a group home, first generation college student, second of 5 siblings to graduate college or graduate high school. And I was coming into this world where I was completely unfamiliar, but my focus was completely in the wrong direction. Just coming to college, trying to mess with a bunch of girls, do a bunch of college stuff, and not really focus on the task and opportunity ahead of me. So we met at the CETA Scholars Program, which CETA is a foster care program for foster youth and higher education at Western Michigan University. So it basically supports foster youth in college with tuition and campus coaches and everything. But we came together during that summer, during set week, summer early transition week, and we became friends and started talking. She thought I was just a young guy because I was an incoming freshman, and she actually transitioned into the program as a college junior. And she thought I was a young guy. She didn't take me too serious, and I thought she was way out of my league. So I was trying, but not really trying, just throwing slight things in the air. But we really developed a nice friendship, which months later transformed into a relationship. Years later, developed into a marriage. So
And how long have you been married for now?
So we got married in August.
This past
nice. Oh, so you got married during COVID time.
Yeah. We're a COVID wedding.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Yeah. So I'm Alexis Black, and I actually entered foster care at about, I think I was 13. And before that, actually, my biological mother passed away, and I lived with my biological father, who was very abusive. And when I entered foster care, I entered with my aunt and uncle. That's who I lived with for a while. And they actually kicked me out my junior year of high school. And I went and lived with my foster parents, who ended up being my adoptive parents and the greatest people on the planet.
Oh, yay!
Yes. And I really just learned for myself that love hurts throughout this process, and that love is also transactional. And so it really wasn't until I met Justin that I got to redefine really what love meant in my life, and in relationships.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, okay, we can see redefining normal on Justin's shirt. We can see redefining normal in the back. Oh, it's on your shirt too. I can't read that one as well.
Okay. This one actually says Rose Empowerment Groups. That's another company that we have, and it's on his hat. Yeah. So we have a couple companies.
But the redefining normal, why did you go with that title?
So redefining normal, this is a concept and idea that has really been relevant in our lives. And I think it's really something that's relevant for each and every person and individual. Everybody has to go through the process of redefining their normal in one way or another in one area of their life. So the concept of redefining normal is that all of us have an identity that is structured by our family, parents, community, and society overall. All of us have this idea and this expectation that's set before us. everybody has an opinion of what you should be, and that becomes part of your identity, even from a young child. So as your family, your parents, and community start to influence you, it starts to shape your identity and who you are. For us and many other people who've experienced extreme trauma, maybe foster care alumni, or people who've never even experienced the foster care system, but have just gone through certain trauma and certain things that have been passed down generationally, sometimes unhealthy habits, unhealthy ways of thinking become normalized, it becomes acceptable, and it becomes culture. So in our book, Redefining Normal, the book is called Redefining Normal, How Two Foster Kids Beat the Odds and Discovered Healing, Happiness, and Love. So this idea of redefining normal really stems from basically us growing up with unhealthy ideas of who we are, and really going through the process of figuring out, okay, how do I change this narrative that's been placed on me? How do I go through the process of thinking that violence, thinking that this unhealthy definition of love, and all these other things that are not normal and not acceptable and not conducive for our future? How do we go through the process of unlearning and relearning? And we have had to challenge ourselves to do that and change our community. But we really want to challenge readers and listeners to do the same, because you may not have gone through extreme trauma like we have, but there may be something simple like financial issues in your family that has been passed down, that maybe people in your family know how to deal with money or know how to deal with mental health. What do you do and the people in your family do when it comes to dealing with emotional health and mental health? And even specifically for a lot of men, where a lot of men, or we just tough it out, or we don't have emotions. But really acknowledging that, okay, you can have emotions, but you just need to figure out and deal with it. So changing the narrative and changing that normal.
I love the way that you said all of that. And that's one of the biggest things. And it's come up a lot in other interviews I've done where they don't say changing the narrative, but they say changing perspective, which is, the same. Changing your perspective, changing your narrative. And I love that redefining normal. I really, really do. It's so catchy and it just sums it all up. And Alexis, hold up your cup again, because I love it. So embracing my past, redefining my future. Love it. And that's in their store. I'm promoting for you. That's in their store. I love it. There was another cup. I was checking out their website before, and it said, I'm busy redefining normal. So I love that. I have socks that say I'm busy changing the effing world. So
I love that.
it's great. But anyways, we'll get back into it. I just wanted everybody to see that because I really liked that. So how did you guys end up in foster care? I know Alexis a little bit shared. So I guess, Justin, how did you end up in foster care?
Yeah, so I entered the foster care system at 9 years old, and I've spent pretty much my entire life in Detroit. That's where I'm from. That's where I'm intentional about rebuilding and everything. That's where all my family is. So I entered foster care at 9 years old, and it was largely due to, I believe, a lot of unhealthy practices passed down generationally, a lot of unhealthy ways of dealing with mental health passed down generationally. And as I grew older as a teenager and young adult, I realized that drug addiction on my mom's side has been generational for it's been passed down in my mom's side of the family for 2 generations. And domestic violence has been on my dad's side of the family for 3 generations. So witnessing a lot of these things growing up and seeing a lot of these things, it was really hard for me to and it became my normal, dealing with things in a violent way, not really addressing my emotions. It became normal to a point where even at 13 years old, when I was living with my aunt, it happened one day randomly where I was walking home from school, and I was attacked by high school students where I was hit with a brick and I lost 6 of my teeth. And I detail these experiences in the book, but even more than the physical pain, and it did hurt a lot, was the mental health aspect that came with things, where I had to go back to school with my smile taken away. And kids can be harsh. And dealing with these things where it not only took my smile, but it took my happiness, and I had to go through the process of figuring things out, especially within the family who didn't understand, like, if I didn't want revenge, then what else did I want? And I had to deal with so many emotional and mental health things, that not having parents in my life, or at least not having them acknowledge me, really took a turn for the worst in my life, and really had to fill that void in other ways.
That's so scary. You're just, walking home, doing your own thing. And I couldn't even imagine. I mean, I was born missing a couple of teeth, which is why it took me a long time to smile. But to have that taken away from you is just horrendous, really. So I'm glad, though, that you've come a long way from there. Now, you've mentioned mental health, and I mean, that is the basis of our show. So let's dive in there, unpack a little bit, and tell us what kind of mental health you guys have dealt with. And obviously, I'm guessing, I shouldn't say obviously, I'm guessing a lot of it had to do with past trauma, so some PTSD type of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So as I mentioned, when my biological mom passed when I was 6, so she actually died by suicide, and so did my grandma, her mother. So that is something that has run in my family, and not really understanding, maybe what has been the cause of that, or trying to really just unpack it and understand it. And so for myself, with the compounded trauma that I had growing up, with my biological father's abuse, and then I entered into an 8-year abusive relationship, and living with my aunt and uncle who was emotionally and mentally abusive. So there was just a lot of compound trauma there. And so I actually got diagnosed with PTSD twice, just trying to really, figure out who I was, my identity, and figure out a healthy, safe place for me. And I think I was about 15 or 16 when I went to the hospital because I was suicidal. And the doctor asked me, do you want to be an inpatient or an outpatient? And I thought an inpatient meant that I could stay in that room and I could be there for a couple of days and it'd be silent and I would have my own peace and my own time. No, I was put in an ambulance and taken to a psychiatric hospital where I was given medication multiple times a day. You get points for taking a shower, for making your bed. I mean, it was beyond awful. That alone was sort of traumatizing in itself. And I don't know, there's just so many people around you that you don't know who they are. There's people pulling out their hair, pooping on themselves, and you're forced to go to therapy 3 times a day. It was really overwhelming for me. So I had to do that for 3 days, and I just said and did everything that I could to get out of there. And I went back to my aunt and uncle's house, and pretty much every day that entire summer, I just sat on the couch and really did nothing. And just, I don't know, I suffered a lot with depression and anxiety and things. And even today, I still take anxiety medication because I still kind of struggle with that. Because part of it, maybe we have so many things going on. We run 5 companies and we have our yeah. And so it's,
whoa.
So it can be a bit overwhelming. So that probably feeds into that a little bit. But so that's the one way that I try to, work to kind of alleviate some of the symptoms that I have and push through it.
Mm-hmm.
So you said you were, what was that, 15 when you went into the hospital?
Yeah.
That is, wow. And I know, like, I'm in Canada and you're in the States, so I know it's very different, but my kid has been into the mental health ward for attempting suicide multiple times. And the experience is significantly different. He did end up going from our local hospital to the children's mental health ward, but it was all kids. They each had their own kind of room, and not to say that it was fabulous. It wasn't like, staying at the Ritz or something, but it did not sound like your experience at all. That sounds like it's more traumatizing than helpful.
Yeah, it was pretty awful. And it was pretty much like what I saw in the movies for like a psych ward where, I don't know, I was like, I could never go back here. And I just feel awful for all the kids that are kind of forced to stay there.
Because that sounds way more traumatizing when you're trying to get help. And then you would not want to seek help again because you don't want to go back there, which just increase the anxiety or increase the depression. And then you're not reaching out for help. So that's, wow. I didn't realize, because I mean, obviously I only have experience from where I live, but wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. All right, Justin, I didn't mean to cut you off. I saw that you were about to talk and I had to get it.
I wasn't. Actually, wasn't. No.
Oh, okay. But we will shift over to you so that you can share the mental health that you have struggled with.
Yeah, so I talked a bit about the experience that happened to me when I was 13, and I feel that I haven't exactly had a diagnosis, but that's when things really took a turn for me. And I think a lot of it starts when, I grew up in the foster care system, but I lived in Detroit where my parents never really lived too far away from me. They always lived about 30 to 40 minutes away, which meant that in my head meant that I wasn't worthy of their love, that I wasn't important enough for them to come see me. And instead of seeing that as maybe they have things that they're dealing with and mental health issues that they're dealing with, because even within the book, I talk about a lot of the traumatic experiences that my mom going through, and that she's experienced extreme sexual abuse and assault as a child, and things that I'm just now finding out when I'm like a young adult or a teenager, actually just a couple years ago, where I feel like we have more grace and mercy for our parents who maybe have neglected us if we understood some of the things that they went through. And
Yeah.
having this perspective now, I understand it. But I mean, of course, no child should have to suffer regardless. But understanding some of the things that they went through as children, I have a better understanding of it. But as a teenager and as a kid who didn't have his parents, I had to fill that void in one way or another. And that came with just being depressed a lot of times, as I'm going in foster homes and living with family members and dealing with so many issues. I just had it in my mind that, man, I wish my parents could just come save me from all of this. And I still had contact with them. I would go catch the bus, or catch the city bus, go visit them, catch a $50 taxi at like 15. You
Wow.
know, I was like, shoveling snow around the neighborhood, and I always found money one way or another. But I would like catch a city bus or a taxi to go find them and see them and everything. And just so many things really affected me mentally, to where my mom told me that, you know, I was 15 at the time, and she told me that, I have all my kids at the house. I can pretty much do what I want, and saying that I can abuse drugs if I want right now because, I have all my children at the house. And mind you, we're all in foster care at this time. I'm the youngest of 5 siblings. I'm 15. I have a brother who was living with me at the time, who was about 16 or 17. And, we're all just trying to figure this out, and we're all lost. For her to say that, it kind of put me into a deep depression and everything, and so many other components and layers that went into just my mental health, and my dad calling me a burden on him, and so many other things that really kind of defeated my self-worth, my self-esteem. And I really had to go through the process of rebuilding that outside of my parents' idea of me and their voice in my head, because so many times when I would attempt to do things in my life and try to challenge myself, go beyond my barriers and limits. And one of her friends always says that, when you become an adult, that little voice in your head a lot of times is your parents. That self-doubt or whatever voice you have is your parents a lot of times. So when I would try to go beyond and try to do more, I would have my parents' voice in my head telling me that I'm a burden, and being reminded that they didn't love me and didn't come visit me. They didn't come to my football game, so I must not be that important. And since I must not be that important, I must not be good enough for this opportunity. And really going through the process of unlearning that and relearning that. And that came with, having amazing mentors around me who spoke life into me, who were extremely successful doctors and lawyers and engineers and pastors. And then they would tell me that you can go to college easy. You are so smart, so brilliant. I see that in you. And them speaking that into me, reminding me that, man, I must be doing something right. So that really helped me out a lot. But it was just a road of just trying to unlearn and relearn.
Yeah. What did you guys go to college for?
So we both went to Western Michigan University, and I got a BBA in entrepreneurship, a BA in global studies, a certificate in nonprofit leadership, and a minor in political science.
Oh my goodness. All right.
I'm a forever student, I guess.
Yeah. And Justin?
I have a BA in public relations and African studies.
Okay. So a lot of stuff that is very useful for running 5 businesses.
Yeah.
We have a PR company, so that came in hand immediately. So
Yeah, that's perfect. Wow. Oh my goodness. So moving forward, right? What did you do to help redefine your normal, to use your words?
Yeah. So for myself, I would say, that really started when I met my foster parents and being kind of exposed to their way of life, their way of thinking and ideology and all of those things that's completely opposite from my childhood. And when I moved in, there was no screaming, yelling, hitting, they actually communicated, they loved each other. And I really learned how to, I guess, have more autonomy and power over my life and my decisions. And my mom really did a lot of work with me on that. And so just learning that process, I would say I took that sort of into college. And I always excelled academically. I think it's probably because college, or not college, education has always been my coping mechanism, because that's always been the one thing that somebody can't take away from me. So I always kind of, throw my life and soul into my studies. And so throughout college, I think I excelled academically, but so then I also received a lot of scholarships. I graduated with $200,000 in scholarships.
Wow.
And thank you. And so we actually started a scholarship company. That was the first one. But
nice.
Yeah. And so that, having our different things that we've overcome and that we've learned, and with our sort of ingrained feelings of we have a duty to give back to others and teach others what it is that we've learned and how we've overcome, that sort of has been channeled into our companies. And so first it started with, us actually getting the ground on our feet and unlearning those habits and trying to heal through those journeys, because we can't bring other people forward with us unless we kind of figure it out ourselves. And so once we started to figure that out, that's when we started to figure out how can we give back with what we have right now. And so that's why I started the Scholarship Expert in 2016. And then when we got together, we tried to figure out what other ways can we serve. And it really started with, volunteering, speaking at events, fundraising, a lot of that sort of stuff, getting involved around campus. Both of us being awarded several prestigious scholarships and fellowships in college, and also having the exposure to different things. Like between the two of us, we studied abroad 13 times. So now we had exposure to, to the world, really. So we could learn that we could redefine ourselves so much further and beyond our circumstances and what's around us. And we had exposure for programs in Washington, D.C. for a couple times. So now we're being drawn to this larger network of individuals that's pushing us and holding us more accountable and really wanting us to succeed. So much of that building our community and our network has kind of formed us to who we are today. And so from that, we kind of got together, and we've always had this mission that we want to give back and serve others. So all of our companies are very much mission oriented and helping other people. And then we have Redefining Normal, where we wrote our book, and we have Rose Empowerment Group that stands for Rising Over Societal Expectations. It's very much focused on serving others. And we have a leadership conference, and there's 3 components of it, which is myself, my community, and my impact.
Nice.
And that's what really largely focus on there. And then the Rose Media Group, which is our PR and marketing company, because we figured out how to sell our book. We've sold over 5,000 copies since November.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been a journey.
And self-published too.
Yeah, and we're self-published. So we figured out how to do it, and we want to really support other authors and getting their message out there and supporting them through that process, because it is very daunting and stressful. And so that is really how we figured that out.
Wonderful. Wow, you guys are doing amazing, rocking it out. I love it. So what coping strategies do you use or that you've learned over this time that you can implement if you are having, say, a rough day?
Yeah, of course. So if you're having a rough day, one of the things that we learn from counseling, breathing techniques always immediately really help you and really serve you in a positive way. Also, just being able to control your thoughts. And it's easy. I'll speak for myself. It's easy for me to snowball and think once one bad thing happens, then all these bad thoughts just start to follow and just lead me down the trail of just completely thinking the worst situation possible. But really, it's about controlling your thoughts and being intentional about thinking. I know it sounds kind of cliche, but thinking positive thoughts and giving yourself grace and mercy that, you made this mistake, or something bad has gone wrong, or maybe when your day first starts, something bad has happened, but it won't ruin the rest of your day. You have control over your day, and you have control over how the day goes and how the day ends. So being in control of the situation, we all heard the statistic where life is about 10% of what happens to us and 90% of how we react.
Yes.
And it's really about that, just being in control of the narrative of your life, of your day. not even thinking like months or years of your life and everything's thinking of today and being in control of today and making this a happy day. And one thing that I've learned to do is try to enjoy the small things. Like, I don't know how the weather is in Canada right now, but in Michigan, it's starting to get a little better. It's starting just to get a little better. So it's just being happy about, listen, the sun's out. I'm happy. Today, I I found my nice pair of pants, my cozy pair of pants, and they're clean. I'm about to put those on and have a good day. It's just those small things. I love these cozy socks that I have on. It's just the small things. Oh, I can get an extra bowl of cereal today. Or I worked out, I'm on my way to reach my weight goal. It's just the small things that make you happy. And you have to be intentional about that, because for so long we take life for granted. We're two foster youth who now have traveled to over 30 countries, who both college graduates, and we have 5 companies. And sometimes, life can be hard, but the way we beat the odds and the things we were able to do in life, I try not to complain and enjoy the small things as much as possible.
Yeah, that is such a good point. And I read somewhere, I cannot for the life of me remember where, but I read somewhere that if you're only ever excited about the big things, like selling 1 million copies of a book, say, then you're always going to be living in a state of unhappiness because you're not appreciating the small things, right? But appreciating the small things mean that you're always living in a happy state, which why wouldn't you want to live in that happy state instead of always looking for the next sort of fix of a big grandiose accomplishment?
Yeah,
it's
and
those accomplishments will be any less fantastic, but you don't have to wait for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, sorry. And I think a lot of that maybe goes into our culture here, like today, where we just always want the next thing, where, the news is always 24/7. And then we have all these different social media platforms that we get to compare ourselves to other people, where it always feels like they're getting the best and the biggest things constantly in their lives. And I know for myself, I really, really struggled with just learning to be present throughout college. And that's probably my only regret in college, is that I got to do so many absolutely amazing things, of going to DC several times and studying abroad all these different times. But every single program that I did, I was applying for the next one while I was on that one, versus how do I actually be present on this one and then think about the next one? Because it's not always about that next opportunity. But I didn't realize that really until after college, where now I'm like, wow, how many moments did I miss because I wasn't learning to be present in that moment?
One thing I do want to add to that real quick, that sometimes I tell people this all the time, and something I want to work on is that, like you said, we always get caught up with the end result, and we always fall in love with the end result. But most of life is just about a process. Whether you're trying to, let's say you're trying to reach a certain goal with your weight and working out, or you're trying to get a certain house, or you're trying to reach a certain amount of money, it's all a process. And once you reach that process, it's going to be another process that follows that. So fall in love with the process. And I always use the working out analogy, because it just seems to make sense. Like, if you say you're trying to reach a certain goal, and you're doing push-ups or sit-ups, or you're going for a run and you're tired, you're out of shape, fall in love with just being out of shape and just that fatigue and being tired, because it's going to be a long road, and that because it's going to hurt, it's going to be painful, it's going to be uncomfortable. But we want to try to learn to embrace the uncomfortable in that process and just love the process overall.
Yeah, that is amazing. I love the way that both of you have explained that, because especially that living in the present is really hard. For I can't remember which level it was, but one of my yoga trainings, so I teach yoga, and one of the trainings we had to read The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And it all talks about living in the now, which is so difficult to do. Like you said, with the social media, and we're always looking for the next thing and the next goal, but being in the process is life. Like, we're always in the process. Even when you reach that goal, if you reach that goal and you're like, okay, cool, I met my goal, then what? Do you just stay there? Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but if you appreciate the process up to that goal, once you hit that goal, you're like, okay, I want to keep going because I loved the process, which sounds like both of you have totally embraced, because you've made a business and then you love the process and made another. But yeah, that's amazing. Living in the moment, I find, is sometimes the absolute hardest thing to do, especially with the social media with pictures, because everyone's so concerned about taking the best picture that you're forgetting to look at what's actually around you.
Yeah.
And I'll admit sometimes I'm bad at that, because so sometimes the grandbaby will be over, and yep, I have a grandbaby. It's adorable.
Congratulations.
Thanks. And sometimes he'll be over and I want to capture that moment because, he's only going to be one once. But at the same time, if you're too busy trying to get him, look this way, look at the camera, then you're too busy trying to get that one shot that you're missing out on the fun of just playing. Like, he was over on the weekend and we spent 15 minutes. He has this little frozen castle. We spent 15 minutes where I would knock on the door, say, anybody home? And he'd push his little hand through and just laugh because now he saw grandma, right? And then we'd close the doors and do it again. And I'm going to remember that forever. He will never remember it, but it was being in the moment, and that moment made me so happy, kind of like your comfy pants. And I'm being happy for this silly little game that we played that, after the first 5 minutes was like, really, this is still funny, but all right, this is still funny. Let's keep going.
I love that.
Yeah, definitely.
Being in each and every single moment and enjoying what is there is so important. And as for the weather today, not so nice. The weekend was quite nice. Just
Oh, yeah. Have you watched the movie Soul?
I have. Oh, I love it.
Yeah. We just watched it like 2 days ago. She actually fell asleep.
Yeah.
I don't want to call you out, but she fell asleep. So
we watched it late. Okay.
It's like 10:30 p.m. So I mean, that movie, first off, I love cartoon movies. I love kid movies. It's just me. My favorite movie is Shrek. I heard it's on Netflix now. This weekend I want to watch the whole series. But with Soul, it's like it's so cool because the movie teaches you to embrace the small things, and how we get so caught up, even with our businesses, we get so caught up with like the grind and like the next thing, the next gig, the next podcast, and so many of the next things that like sometimes with me and Alexis, it's like we got like 45 minutes before the next thing. Let's just go for a walk. We just bought some bikes. How about let's put our bikes together and go for a ride downtown and try to make time for the small things, like laying down, going for walks, and embracing those small things. We don't want to ever take those for granted. And that movie really reminded me of that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's exactly how I saw that movie too, is just embrace all those small things. And when he was in the cat, it was so cute and hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, for anybody,
I gotta finish it.
Yeah, for anybody who hasn't seen that movie, it's on Disney Plus if you have Disney Plus. But Soul, so good.
I love it. I love the movie.
Yes, me too. All right, so what would you tell somebody who is going through some struggles right now? What would you tell them?
Oh man, it really just depends on that. So what type of struggle they're going through. I mean, it could be so many different types of struggles out there that, I mean, like, for example, if you're in college and you're dealing with like some hard assignments, that's a different type of struggle. If let's say you're going into a certain situation where you've encountered some type of diagnosis or some type of injury or something like that, where something that may be so more permanent, or it's so many different type of struggles, it's hard to say and different advice. But I would just say, really, like we said before, try to enjoy the small things that you do have. Try to enjoy the little victories that you can accomplish, and try to, if you do have a support system and loving people around you that you do consider family, that you do consider your community and friends, try to continue to surround yourself with those people for their support. And remember that you're not in this alone. So many times in life, we try to figure things out on our own and by ourselves. And there's like billions of people on this earth. I just don't believe that we're meant to hold all this inside of us, all this stress and everything that's going on within us. I just don't think we're meant to share the burden. We're supposed to spread the burdens of our lives out with other people. We're all supposed to share that and come together as a unit, as a family, community, whatever friend group, whatever you have. We're supposed to come together and figure that out and work through it and process it. So never feel that you have to figure things out on your own. And if you are alone, just try to reach out. I mean, we'll put our contact information if you want to just, I don't know, contact us for anything, ask questions. We'll always try to do what we can, or at least point you in the right direction towards someone, but never try to figure things out on your own. Try to have a good family or community around you.
And Alexis, anything that you would say or add to that?
He's always the man of words, where
Oh man,
he always seems to encompass everything mostly that I'm gonna say. But for the most part, as you know, pretty much just adding on what he said, is having that support network around you. I think is the most important thing that you could do, and you just know that you feel safe and comfortable to be able to call on them when you need them, whether it's for a good time or you're struggling. These are people around you that really just love you and want the best for you, and so it's in your good times that you have built these networks with these people, that when it is a struggle, that you know that you can call and count on them.
Excellent. Well, where can people find your books?
Yeah, you can get our book at re-definingnormal.com. That's our website. It's re-definingnormal.com. And on our website, we have merchandise, as you mentioned. We have
so cool.
We actually have an audiobook coming out in May and a workbook coming out in May. So we have a lot of things in the works. And we have the Rose from Concrete podcast, which actually Justin hosts. So do you have anything else you wanted to add?
So what is the podcast about? Like, if I want
the Rose from Concrete podcast, I mean, the Rose from Concrete concept, are you familiar with Tupac Shakur? But legendary hip hop artist, and he had this poem called The Rose from Concrete, where there's a rose that comes from concrete, and roses don't usually come from concrete, and it's nearly pretty much impossible. But somehow this rose has emerged from concrete, and as it blossomed, is rose petals are damaged. It looks pretty bad. It's messed up. And what everybody always focuses on is the damaged rose, instead of thinking, wow, this is a rose that grew from concrete. So in this podcast, we discuss people's life circumstances, career initiatives, businesses, career choices that they've had to overcome, that people don't really understand, that they want to look at the negative end, but we really want to see them blossom and see the positives and see how they've been able to overcome, and just talk about life in general and ask those tough and interesting questions, because I'm just a naturally curious person. So I love just asking those questions about so many things and people's careers and life altogether.
Wonderful. And of course, I will be putting all of those links in the description below. So make sure you follow them as well. I'm assuming, yes, show it off. I am assuming you are on social media. So those links will go down there as well. Give them a follow. And just thank you so very much for being on the show and sharing.
Thank you so much for having us. Really, this has been awesome.
Yeah, this is amazing. This is an amazing platform. I'm excited for you, and thank you for having us on.
I hope everybody enjoyed that episode. They were a ton of fun to talk to, and if you get a chance, go check out their website. Actually, not if you get a chance, make a chance and go check out their website. It's really cool. I love their merchandise that is on there and the message that they are sending out to everybody, right? It's not just, hey, come buy my stuff, but they really want to help the community, and they send that message out, and it's amazing what they're doing. So check them out, give them a follow. Remember those links in the description. Go ahead, give them a little follow. And of course, subscribe to our channel, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends. And remember that the only way to end the stigma of mental health is to speak openly and honestly. Bye.